There's some weird stuff going on in the Smogon community because as a response to me dismantling all of their ban logic, we now have the Freedom Cup. What if 6v6 singles was played with the same rule set the official formats use? That means no Smogon bans or clauses, only the rules that have been prescribed for the official formats just made as a 6v6 format. And my response to that is this. Why can't you just be normal and call it Battle Stadium 6v6? It describes everything you need to know about the format way better than the Freedom Cup, or call it official 6v6. Instead, this actually seems like a snarky attempt to put down the official rule set by Smogon, which is kind of what the history of Smogon has been about. Feels really sarcastic, like, oh, this is freedom. Don't you guys enjoy freedom? Because in Smogon players' minds, that if you actually play without their rule set, it's only going to be evasion, and it's only going to be baton pass and ban Pokemon, but that's not the reality. So it seems like they're trying to like set this up for failure, where it's like, oh, wasn't that just the worst format you've ever played? How was the Freedom Cup, guys? Also, this video gonna need the big support, so if you enjoy it, don't forget to leave a like, share with your friends, and comment your thoughts down below. So yeah, we got some weird stuff going on, and then I wanted to see how Smogon players were reacting to the existence of this, so we have a strategy discussion thread. Hello Baton Pass, hello Fluttermane, Iron Bundle, Palafin, Chi Yu, Chin Pao, and others. You already described more things than can fit on a Pokemon team, which is a big point I made in my previous Smogon videos, that if you have more than 6 bans, it doesn't make sense, because then you don't have, like, the perfect, god, unbeatable strategy of just, like, the hardest 6 things that need to be banned. How can you use over-centralization as an argument when you have more things banned than can be put on a team? Everything can't be over-centralizing. They want the game to be easy and predictable, and if you get creative to kind of take out any of the threats, well, you're just in the wrong, and that should have never happened to begin with. And if one of the creative things you happen to discover ends up becoming a bannable threat in its own, well, that just gets removed and we never have to deal with it again. And then we just have standard Smogon player ignorance. Shouldn't the team list be public, as that's the current rule set for VGC? Oh my god, I haven't facepalmed like that in a good long while. I can't wait to sport every Pokemon on the team at once. This whole thing really proves how much of a bubble Smogon is in, because once again, like, you remove any of their bans, and then they think that the entire metagame is only going to become the things that were banned, even though that's never been reflected in the real Pokemon rules that don't have the Smogon clauses, bans, and other restrictions. Baton Pass is going to dominate the ladder, so optimizing Baton Pass is what I'm going to try to do. Smogon players really think that the only viable things in Pokemon are the things that have been banned, even though they were sleeper for so long. Like, before the Baton Pass ban, it wasn't that big of a problem. Like, it just came out of nowhere, became the flavor of the month everyone played, and instead of, like, trying to find counterplay around and actually develop the meta, and that just got so overwhelming to this bubble of a casual player base that it just needed to be banned, and that's the only thing that these players think about now, is like, alright, anytime there's Baton Pass, Baton Pass is the most optimal strategy to ever exist in Pokemon, even though it has many, many counters. And the way this format breaks down is fascinating when being played by almost exclusively Smogon NPCs. Smogon players are years behind by thinking Baton Pass is the most optimal way to play the game, but the Japanese players have already solved this over the last couple of years and generations. Mostly Season 3, Generation 8 is when it became like really prevalent, that the most optimal way to play the game is anti-setup. So Baton Pass would get slaughtered if these kids ever ventured out of their Smogon safe space, even in like 3v3 or 6v6 Battle Stadium in the real game. Hey, does anyone else in the forum have good Baton Pass teams? This dude is fixated. He really can't let it go. The elephant in the room, Baton Pass. Alright, let's see how unstoppable Baton Pass is. Let's see how unplayable competitive Pokemon is if Baton Pass is allowed to exist. Alright, we got Ting-Lu versus Trashapult. So we're coming in with that Reflect, Payback, doing crazy amounts of damage to the Dragapult, and then just committing to the dual screens. Now, we recently saw a light clay ban from Smogon, but that just kind of proves me right about how the Smogon bans are doing nothing to make the game any better, because when you strip all the power and all the counters and all the mechanics out of the game, then there's just going to be something new that becomes unstoppable. So you're like, okay, this guy's going for his dual screens. It's now a 5v6 with dual screens. Is Baton Pass strong enough to offset that? So now we're seeing agility from the Hatterene into the Calm Mind. Payback doing weird damage because the agility made Payback stronger. Wasn't able to get a big setup for the Drifblim, but just a little bit. You know, we got some Calm Mind in there, not stopping the physical hits. Evasion coming through. So, alright, it's happening. Minimize. Evasion is allowed, therefore Pokemon is unplayable. There's nothing you can do about it. Oh, right. Eventually a move is going to hit. Oh, he forfeited. Smogon players in a nutshell. Baton Pass and Evasion just got swept by Payback Ting Lu. It's almost like Smogon is in a bubble, and if you come outside from real Pokemon into that bubble, you just play normal stuff and beat them because they can't be normal. Baton Pass is inherently a cheesy strategy, aiming to stack boosts to the point of becoming unkillable. Then the chain passes off the boost to a designated sweeper that cleans everything's clock. While this is very much a cheese strategy, the player can optimize it to make it as effective as possible. You mean every Pokemon strategy and team ever, that you want to optimize it to make it as effective as possible to reduce the chance of getting swept by something strange. That's another thing about the Smogon logic, is that, again, whenever any new flavor of the month pops up, now it's like clay, so that needs to be taken down. Years ago it was Baton Pass. Same thing with Shadow Tag. Not a problem forever, suddenly unacceptable. This is why Smogon is for casuals. They want to remove all the variants out of the game that could potentially make them feel bad because they don't think they deserve to lose. And instead of putting in the work to optimize and play with or around the meta, they just ban whatever threat gets in the way because, again, it's flavor of the month, and that means, you know, clock is ticking, we just gotta get it out of here. Don't let the game develop at all, no. This is an attempt to try to make a comprehensive guide to Baton Pass. Feedback is much appreciated. And this is where we can see a lot of the issues with Smogon, because of posts like this in a small, bubbled community, it's just going to be a lot of NPCs piling on and then making this the thing. But it's not unstoppable. It's not the best way to play Pokemon. It's not going to have an unacceptably high win rate. The problem with Baton Pass is it just feels really bad to lose to, because if you slip up a little bit or you mispredict, like, you realize game's over after a couple of turns, and then, like, you're either helpless or you need to forfeit. That's not going to happen every game. That's not going to happen most games. And even if you lose to Baton Pass half the time, that's only a 50% win rate. And that's assuming Baton Pass has 100% presence, but it's not going to, and if it does have absurdly high presence, then you just run counters to it and inflate your win rate while decreasing the theoretical 50% win rate of Baton Pass. Wow, meta development, guys! The concept that Smogon players just cannot understand. And also, again, since they don't play real Pokemon, they don't understand how it, like, just is not a threat in real Pokemon. Even 6v6, Battle Stadium, or Battle Spot Rule singles, which is a thing and has always been a thing, but also 3v3. Like, 3v3 has as much power or more power for Evasion and Baton Pass because they could just not bring the Pokemon that counters it, and then you should theoretically have the free win. But people aren't even teching like a 5th, 6th slot Baton Pass chain or Evasion Pokemon or something like that. It's just not as good as Smogon players fear that it is. And I mean, we can just immediately break down this Timmy right here. The Pokemon that should be on every serious Baton Pass team. Psychic type? Psychic type. Wait, just weak to dark, which is why, like, Ting Lu is the anti-lead, just dumpsters it, and then also, like, Ting Lu's coverage, access to fissure. Yeah, this kind of, like, shuts down all of the NPC Smogon stuff, and we can see it play through very, very simply. Espathra is straight up banned in Smogon, but it's not common in 3v3 at all. Espathra, 49th most used in Battle Stadium singles. The difference between 3v3 and 6v6 is not that great. And only a third of them are running Baton Pass in Battle Stadium anyways. We also have Espeon. This Pokemon has been power crept for a long time. It's too frail, and the 110 speed, not quite enough. Magic Bounce is crucial to the function of Baton Pass. Being able to block Taunt, Whirlwind, and other status of that nature is absolutely incredible. Espeon serves as a very potent Baton Pass sweeper with stored power and Dazzling Gleam coverage. That's really what it comes down to, where it's like you have to land on a stored power Pokemon that has fairy coverage as well, which further limits the Pokemon that you can use and sweep with. Now, Magic Bounce is very strong, and, like, the biggest counter to Baton Pass change is just going to be, like, Whirlwind, and potentially just, like, immediate Taunt or something. And that's where I say, like, Japanese players would absolutely demolish these Baton Pass kids. They play unbelievable amounts of schizophrenic anti-setup, and the problem with Baton Pass teams is that it's a very binary gimmick. You shut down the Baton Pass, and then the game is just over, which is why you kind of see this play right here, towards like, did I get it? Nope, I leave, FF. Do I coin flip win Solitaire? No, well, it's because my opponent was trash and doesn't understand how Pokemon's supposed to work anyway, so this loss doesn't count. And if you want to block the Taunt Whirlwind, that means you need to run Espeon on your team. So if you see an Espeon on the opposing team for Baton Pass, then you just play around. And that's another problem with Smogon players, is that if they can't do the flowchart, if they can't read off the script, they crumble. So instead of just actually like playing around the Espeon and like the Taunt Whirlwind setup, it's like they just let Baton Pass happen, then complain about it to justify being banned, instead of using like mental power and team building skills to actually work their way through it. It's just laziness. It's just being a baby. Then we have the components of Baton Pass. Screen's lead. Well, we saw Dragapult get dumpstered because it's terrible Pokemon, and then we also have like the weird mixed way that Espeon can work by either being a part of the screen's lead or the overall finishing sweeper in the chain, but it can't really do both. So it can be very frail and help kick off the chain, but when it leaves, then you can just kind of get whirlwinded out and lose all of your setup, or also hazed. Like, boom, haze, just giga mega counter to any kind of setup. We also have the Baton Pass chain. The chain is the bread and butter of the team style. The chain is the most crucial part of the process, and then they say like, yo, that's where you go Drifblim for the evasion. But you can just lead Drifblim. Like, you don't need the screens, and that's where we can also see this, where it's like, okay, proof Smogon's in a bubble. They're all playing the same Baton Pass. That there's no, like, anti-Baton Pass, there's no development around this. The players are lazy. They're just kind of effectively playing it off the tier list to where it's like, oh, what's the S tier? Alright, everyone NPC into that S tier. Oh no, everyone NPCing into the S tier, not, like, making their own thing, means we have a problem and we just need to ban everything. And even then, they still can't get it right. Calm Mind instead of Stockpile. I mean, like, you just finish the chain on a Nasty Plot Pokemon. Or also you can go Swords Dance if you have the stockpiles, because then it gives you defensive boost, which means you can cover for more things. So Drifblim is a double scary Pokemon. It has Baton Pass and Evasion, and that's why it's 86th in the 3v3 Battle Stadium, and doesn't always run Baton Pass even. It's also one of those weird things where I got grilled for introducing the world to this Drifblim back in Generation 6 of my content, but I've been running it since Generation 4, and I was hard winning Pokemon battles for a very long time. But people called this bad and casual, and now it's a part of one of the most quote-unquote centralizing, needs-to-be-banned, game-breaking things in all of Pokemon. The Pokemon community's derangement and toxicity to just constantly lie about me always being wrong and never admitting I'm right, even when I'm right, is why things are so terrible in Pokemon. And that's why I've been against Smogon since before I even made this channel. And it's some of the first Pokemon content I ever made, so just a lot of weird stuff. And then there's even the recommendation to run Scovillain for Moody, because I guess you're stacking just banned things on top of banned things, and it counts as an in-game sweeper. And then once again, like showing the Espeon and some of the other Pokemon, I mean, if Espeon's the in-game sweeper, then you just taunt, haze, whirlwind before the chain like gets too fat to deal with, and then they never get off the ground. And if you phase in the Espeon, it's now just vulnerable and frail and has nothing going for it, and like you can break sashes, or you can just do whatever and just put it in the dumpster. And they say that Espeon is the best late game sweeper. So if we have the best Pokemon on the best strategy, which is Baton Pass, then why don't you just play to counter it? There's Pokemon that get both Mold Breaker and Taunt. Hawlucha's even faster than Espeon. But then here's where like Smogon just has their baked in out, where it's like, oh, lower tier doesn't count. So again, creativity is ignorance. If you bring up something from the lower tier that stops any of these like strong meta Pokemon or becomes a counter or debunks their arguments as to why something needs to be banned, no, it's just automatically dismissed. Even though if we actually played in a world where the meta was allowed to develop, well, if the thing that needs to be banned is so over-centralizing and so common, and you pull up these lower tier threats to counter them, that means the usage is going to go up, and this is no longer UU, it's actually preemptively an OU Pokemon to stop the flavor of the month. And then we have this, boring meta threats. Any of the following Pokemon are perfectly potent sweepers thanks to their general power, and that's just like Baton Pass. It doesn't really matter what you finish the chain on. The game's already over and has been over for several turns by that point. But what they don't realize is like, okay, you have Iron Bundle. Iron Bundle is going to dumpster an Espeon in the middle of its setup. We have 2 Encore Pokemon here that end the game on the spot if you're leading screens. Also, I just realized if it's lead Espeon for screens, that means you're going to have the Light Clay, which means you can still get one shot. And I'm pretty sure there's like some banded, bruisery Pokemon out there that have a Dark type move that can actually like one-hit KO Espeon through the Reflect. Or just outspeed it and KO it with the Dark Pulse or something. Good luck even trying to start a Baton Pass chain if they have a banded Chien Pao on their team. Wait a second. It's almost like Verlisify has always been right in that when you ban so much stuff, you just ban the counters, and then the game destabilizes, and Smogon was flawed to begin with because their rule set breaks all the base mechanics. You can't remove item claws and other balancing mechanics like one-hit KOs, and then expect your game to even start off to have a chance to be balanced. So the boring meta threats you can augment your Baton Pass team with can also be used to counter Baton Pass. And then there's talk about Baton Pass counterplay, a lot of it being Terra Dark, mostly on like just disgustingly tanky Pokemon or unaware Pokemon, and that's why you need a Fairy plus stored power, but then like you're just making it more binary and counterplayable on the whole idea of Baton Pass. Whirlwind, Taunt, and the Case of Dragontail. Right, I forgot about Dragontail even. Whirlwind and Taunt work differently, both have the same purpose, to disrupt the chain. It's not at all uncommon for a Pokemon in a Baton Pass chain to only carry status, making Taunt potentially lethal, even if you have built enough defense to stall out the turns. Counterplay is the same. Oh yeah, that's another thing. People meme on me for my all status movesets that are like heavy on setup, but then Baton Pass gets banned, with the staple of it being a lot of all status Pokemon that are taunt bait, but people made fun of me and my Drifblim and my movesets for being taunt bait. If it's taunt bait, then bring taunt. And if you lose because you didn't bring taunt, then don't complain. That's really like how this plays out. It really just keeps coming back to Smogon players being bad at Pokemon, which is why they have to latch on to the casual format and just have no creativity whatsoever and just copy whatever flavor of the month is going on. So when everyone's running it, they call it over-centralizing instead of actually like adapting, and whenever they lose with this broken thing that needs to be banned, they just dismiss the loss as BS. And then they just keep running the same thing, which contributes to the over-centralization problem. But as we've seen, with actual Smogon ban logic this generation, over-centralizing isn't an argument. They'll just be like, this Pokemon isn't over-centralizing, but we just think it's unhealthy, so banned. No suspect test, the council has decided. With Iron Defense from Scizor, you are hinging your Baton Pass chain on an Iron Defense from Scizor. Okay, and Calm Minds from everything, its poor bulk can be mitigated, but I mean, like, you're still taunt bait and you're still phase bait. Hatterene doesn't work as well due to its terrible speed, causing it to be outsped by fast Pokemon. Mental Herb can be used to deflect taunt, but not Whirlwind. Dragentail is a little weirder. It's not a status move, and as a result, cannot be countered by Magic Bounce. The counterplay is simpler here. Fairy types outright block Dragentail, while Substitute with enough defense boost could shake it off. You still gotta get there. Here's another big problem about Smogon ban logic, is that they already assume they've generated all the advantage. Stealth Rocks is already up for them, they maybe even have a substitute, and they're also running a Pokemon that has 3 different items and 6 different moves. Since you can't counter that, it obviously means the Pokemon's too strong and needs to be banned. Okay, where's the Fairy type setup Pokemon that you're using for Baton Pass? Like, we have Hatterene, but these aren't Fairy type Pokemon. No, Drifblim's not a Fairy type Pokemon. I guess Grimmsnarl is, but like Dragapult, all these other ones, especially when it comes down to like the Pokemon that need to be on every serious team, these aren't fairies. And what are you going to do? Terra Fairy your setup Pokemon so you don't get Dragon-tailed? Now you lose the Terra for your sweeping Pokemon, and you also just gave a lot of your strategy away, and you're open up to counterplay still. Okay. Critical hits! Critical hits easily end the chain. With the number of high-powered threats running around, it's important to prepare for crits. And also, you're spending so many turns on setup, that 1 in 24 chance is going to come around a couple of times. Which also kind of reduces the win rate of Baton Pass just innately. Even though it's RNG, it's still a natural game mechanic. You are going to lose games to a random crit because you're leaving yourself vulnerable for so long, which is also a vulnerability in the strategy. And then, like, look at all these Pokemon. So yeah, Baton Pass is too strong because you can have this Pokemon on your team, this Pokemon on your team, this Pokemon to counter that. Also Terra Fairy, this, not those Pokemon, those are the counters, but like this, that, this, also this Pokemon. Therefore, my team of 20 theoretical Baton Pass Pokemon respond to any of the 3 Pokemon you could be running. Therefore, Baton Pass needs to be banned. You lose, and the Freedom format's garbage. Roll Compendium. Seek help. Alright, so as everyone above me has mentioned, this meta is going to be Baton Pass focused, so I present Thundurus. Oh wait, Prankster Taunt. Any Pranks Pokemon that learns Taunt will work, but Thundurus is my personal favorite for this. Hey, it's weird how Thundurus wasn't put as a counter in this, so it's almost like there's more things to the game than Smogon players just kind of fart out for their logic. Rain teams are honestly really cool with Last Respects being unbanned. Ghost Fishy is going to be insane here. I mean, what happened to Houndstone? Like, Last Respects is on multiple Pokemon, you can run both of them, but yeah, like, Basculegion looking to be the better pick, but it's also kind of harder to build around with the rain. So, I mean, like, Tyranitar is just a good Pokemon. Like you said, in Tyranitar, you gain some advantage, and then, like, Houndstone for the cleanup can also do that. There's a lot going on with the game. But wait, I thought Baton Pass was, like, everyone's running it, that's the over-centralizing thing. This format can't exist because, like, Baton Pass evasion is too strong. But what about the Last Respects teams? They're just tacking on a Scarf Last Respects Pokemon for the end game and saying, hope this works. That could happen too. And then all the other banned Pokemon, all the other strong things where it's like, or you just get completely shut down by an Encore Iron Bundle, and then like somehow it just goes wrong and they have like a normal type Pokemon left for your Last Respects and you just lose the game. Encore normal Dragonite with Fire Spin. Good luck playing your Last Respects on top of setup. You lose to 1 Pokemon. These kids don't know what's going on inside of real Pokemon, and it's insane. But I will give credit right here, because instead of just kind of like falling into the flavor, Counterplay, oh my god, the meta's developing. That's like, okay, so what we do is we stop Baton Pass if it's going to be so prevalent, and then we run Last Respects. But then like there's going to be normal Counterplay, and oh my god. It's almost like the Freedom format's better. Verlisify is always right. Smogon bans have been wrong the entire time. I feel like if the Pokemon community was normal and just played Battle Stadium 6v6 and disregarded tiers because it's garbage and the Smogon format is like extra hot garbage, we would actually just have like a really balanced and fun competitive format that everyone is cool with. But the problem is, this format and tournament is playing out inside of a bubble. So we're not going to see the true diversity that would happen if we had the greater competitive Pokemon player base just playing 6v6 naturally. Also, it's a limited time tournament, so we're not going to see as much meta development, but who knows, maybe some like cracked anti-meta strats end up just kind of like doing really well, and it shows promise for the format, but who even knows with how like weird Smogon players are, so yeah. Wild. Hope you guys enjoy the video, hope you have a nice day, thank you very much for watching.